Today, we're going to be taking a look at 10 underused Pokemon in Regulation F that I think have a lot of potential in the current format. And I've decided to take a page out of the Smogon Singles book here and only use Pokemon with less than 4.25% usage on Peakalytics. So to kick things off here, we have the king of Regulation E, one of the best Pokemon we've had since its release here, and that is Hisuian Arcanine. The Hisuian Arcanine, in my opinion, is probably the best rock type in the format. Obviously, you know, we do have other really good options as well, and things like Glamora, even the Ogerpon Stone Mask as well, I do think is pretty good. But I think Hisuian Arcanine is definitely the best rock type right now. Why did this mon drop off, I guess, is a fantastic question, and as I'm sure we're all aware, it is the new big cat, the new king of the fire types, the #1 intimidator in the format, and that is Incineroar. But thankfully, Hisuian Arcanine does actually have a very good matchup into Incineroar. Obviously, Incineroar does have Fake Out, which is, you know, one of the major differences between them, and honestly, just an unbelievably strong, you know, support kit. But Hisuian Arcanine, on the other hand, is a very strong offensive threat, right? So a lot of the time, people right now are playing Hisuian Arcanine with the Choice Band. And obviously, it has just some incredible stab moves, right? Obviously, Flare Blitz is really, really good. Rock Slide is also really, really good. Has, you know, a banded E-Speed, which is very good for cleaning up late game, or, you know, even picking off mons on low health. And then, of course, it has access to things like Head Smash as well. In the past, we have also seen it run things like Terra Fairy, Terra Blast. And while I do think Terra Fairy is definitely one of the best Terras on it, you know, you don't necessarily have to run Terra Blast just because of how, you know, strong this move is. When you look at this, like, even at -1, like, even if you go, say, something like, you know, something like this with Adamant, that is still doing a lot of damage. In saying that, though, I do actually think Jolly is the best set. I think Jolly Max Speed is incredibly good on this mon. 156 hits a speed tier that a lot of Pokemon aren't prepped for, right? We're currently in a metagame where a lot of, you know, these Ogerpawns are either, like, trying to outspeed, you know, Timid Max Speed Landorus, or they're trying to outspeed, obviously, like, these modest Landorus's, right? So they're going to things like 104, and obviously things like Landorus and Incarnate, obviously if they play modest, they can't go faster than, you know, 152. A lot of, you know, the Pokemon as well, things like the Urshifus, right? Even like Chiyus in the current metagame, they're all running like modest or adamant. And because of that, most of them are all hitting around that 149 to 152 speed tier. And because of that, I do think, you know, Jolly Max Speed Arcanine is very, very good. But also when you look at this mon, right, it has a fantastic matchup into a lot of the top threats, right? Obviously Fluttermane is, you know, arguably the best Pokemon in the format right now. You have the ability not only one just to resist its main stab moves, being like things like Moonblast, but also two, you can just, you know, fire off a, you know, a band of Flare Blitz and just kill it, right? Even if, you know, you get intimidated, you're still just going to fire off a ridiculous amount of damage into it. And I'm pretty sure majority of Fluttermanes, even at -1, if the Arcanine that is -1, still just get picked up by the Flare Blitz, right? Obviously, you know, things like Incineroar. If you come in after the Incineroar is already on the board, you can threaten massive damage with Banded Rock Slides. Of course, you know, Amoonguss is another Pokemon that really doesn't want to eat a Banded Flare Blitz. And honestly, the list just goes on and on, right? You have a look at a lot of these Pokemon as well. You know, we're seeing a lot of Ogerpon Fire right now also picking up. Like, just the majority of the metagame really doesn't want to eat Rock Slides, right? I feel like the Rock typing right now is very good offensively. And yeah, there's just a lot of Pokemon out there that really don't want to just, you know, take it on, right? And it's also very, very good for hyper offensive mirrors. If you are playing against, like, for example, you know, if you're playing your own Tornadus Tailwind team, for example, and you're going up against an opposing HO team, Hisuian Arcanine's great. It is, you know, again, the best Rock Slider we have in the format right now. It's just very, very good at pressuring things like the, you know, the Tornadus, while also putting pressure on their, you know, partner as well with things like Rock Slide. So yeah, I think Hisuian Arcanine right now, it's definitely underrated, but I do think, especially with its performance at Utrecht, it will definitely be on the rise. And people will start realizing, you know, while it doesn't have the defensive utility of something like the Incineroar, its offensive power plus its, you know, Intimidate utility is still very, very good, and its typing is very unique and very powerful offensively. Now, carrying over to another very strong fire type, we actually have Volcarona, right? So Volcarona is a mon that I believe, I think it was Gabagadi, recently had a very, very good result with this. I want to say at the smaller regional we did just have. But look, this one is honestly in a fantastic position right now. When it comes to setup, Quiver Dance is without a doubt one of the best setup moves we have in the metagame. And not to mention too, this one is just, you look at these stats, it's pretty insane, right? You have like a really, really good special attack. For a setup mon that has like a speed boosting move as well, like base 100 is like really, really good. This one's biggest issue obviously is this right here, right? It's very, very poor defensive stat, but thankfully this mon can kind of pick up with it for its EV spread, right? So I'd say a lot of the time, for this one in particular, you really want to make sure that you either one, just straight up outspeed things like, you know, the Urshifus, for example, even the Landorus Incarnates, you know, I think at least 150 is like bare minimum. I think even hitting like 154 on this mon is honestly fine, especially because it is a jump number, as you see here. Obviously, you know, jump numbers I do think are very, very important. So hitting that jump there is very, very nice. And a lot of the time too, you get up one Quiver Dance, you're going to outspeed everything you need to anyway. And sometimes as well, even getting up two is very, very good into opposing Tailwind teams, right? And then again, you look at what this mon has. One of its biggest things here is Heat Wave. The ability to set up plus Heat Wave, I do think is like very, very good. Also, I guess just like kind of round out the spread here, you would probably just go something like this in all honesty. You'd have to double check the calcs. You could like even potentially like drop this down a little bit. And then like keep buffing up the defense. I'd have to double check specific calcs on it. Again, you could even drop this down to something like, 150 if you're specifically just going for an Urshifu number. But I do think, having this again at 154 is like very, very good. And honestly, just maxing this out. At least that's how I kind of look at it. Again, you'd have to play around with a bit more to see if there's any specific calcs you really, really need to live, right? But yeah, you look at this here, right? And this one, it's got this like strong heat wave coming off a pretty powerful special attack stat. Again, even non-invested, this is still really, really good. And if you ever get the Quiver Dance up, all of a sudden, your special attack stat is like, somewhere probably near 230. I don't know the math off the top of my head, but it's still very, very high, right? And then you also have Flame Body, which is obviously fantastic into the metagame right now. Again, you look at how physically orientated this metagame is, and I think Flame Body is just, it's fantastic, right? Even things like Urshifu Rapid, if you have a good defensive Terra type, even something like Terra Grass, for example, all of a sudden, you're able to just like eat up these hits. If they ever click Surging Strike on you, you're just gonna like, 30% chance to Flame Body proc. You run something like Citrus Berry as well, just so you can always like live them. And it's just, yeah, it's like incredibly good. And again, even if you go like Terra Grass, this one has access to things like Giga Drain, which for like, for recovery, which is obviously very, very good. You can even run different Terras as well. I think I've seen people even run like things like Terra Fairy, to help out in the opposing matchup against the Raging Bolt. So like if you go Terra Fairy and you go up against a Carbine Raging Bolt, you can just go like Terra here and then just Quiver Dance to +6 because they can't do anything about it. They can't Thunderclap you if you're Quiver Dancing, and they can't hit you with a Dragon move as well, which is like very, very good. And again, this one just has like a lot of good coverage as well, right? Obviously, Bug Buzz is like another very, very powerful stab move. If you really want to like slow down, obviously other special attackers as well, I do think Struggle Bug is also like decent. It's good chip and guarantees the special attack drop. Although in saying that, special attackers aren't like super, super common right now. But honestly, this one just has like a very, very wide, variety of moves it can run, right? You have a look here, Air Slash, probably wouldn't recommend that. Terra Blast also is actually like pretty interesting. Yeah, honestly, it's actually not as deep as I thought it was. I think Giga Drain is probably just like the way to go if you're not running your stabs. But yeah, like it's still like a really, really cool mon. And yeah, I do think the Terra Fairy set, like honestly, even, dude, actually, I think Terra Fairy is really good. You can honestly just go Terra Fairy, Terra Blast, right? Give yourself a way to hit those Raging Bolts. But yeah, I think this one's like incredibly good. It pairs incredibly well again with like what I would consider like the best, core right now in the format, which is these balance teams, right? These Incineroars, these Amoonguses, the Rillabooms, right? Especially like these setup Pokemon like Volcarona that, fit so naturally with one like Rillaboom. They cover each other pretty well defensively. And again, like having, just terrain recovery, fake out, plus like, Quiver Dance. It's very, very good, right? And obviously this is one that loves Intimidate. It's just like, it's super good, right? And again, like even with things like Urshifu Rapid Strike dropping off, just having a fire type that can set up is like super good, man. Like it's just really, really good in the current metagame. And yeah, I think in terms of like all the setup mons, this is like, it is, I don't want to say it's the best setup mon because I still think Raging Bolt holds that spot as like the #1 setup Pokemon in the format, but it really has the ability to outpace almost any Pokemon that wants to set up, right? It feels really, really hard to pin Volcarona in the late game, especially too if you like aren't able to keep your what's it called, your fake out support alive. But yeah, Volcarona like super good right now. So moving over to one of my personal favorite Pokemon to use right now, and that is Big Bad Baxcalibur. I think Bax is in a really, really good spot right now. Obviously, it's definitely a bit underused. It's not the premier dragon type in the format. Obviously that does belong to things like Raging Bolt. Of course, things like D-Knight and Roaring Moon still are getting quite a bit of play. But I think Baxcalibur has a very, very good niche where, one, it's a lot faster naturally than things like Roaring Moon, right? Not Roaring Moon, sorry, Raging Bolt. Raging Bolt, a lot of the time, I think they hit it like I think they hit 96 speed naturally off the top of my head. So you're a bit faster there. Obviously, you have still got very, very good bulk. Your HP stat is a little bit lower than Raging Bolt's. Actually, let's have a look at these next to each other. So let's have a look. So your HP is 10 less and defensive stats are very, very similar. Yeah. So bulk wise, it is very, very close to Raging Bolt. Unfortunately, the ice type is nowhere near as good defensively as the electric typing is, but you still have this absurdly high physical attack stat paired up with one of the, the best stab moves in the game being Glavis Rush. And honestly, this one here with Clear Amulet is just really, really good. I think the Clear Amulet set with Ice Shard Swords Dance is like super, super good right now. Obviously, we see mons like Landorus and Incarnate right now that are running around and just like super strong. And yeah, the ability just to like threaten a one-shot on them with something like Terra Ice Shard is like, with Swords Dance Ice Shard is obviously like super, super good. This is a mon that also loves Terra Poison, especially too right now with like mons like Fluttermane around, right, having the ability to resist it. Also a way to potentially get out of basically allow you to survive something like a Draco Meteor coming off a Raging Bolt as well is obviously very, very good. And yeah, this one honestly just like, it pumps out a lot of damage, right? Like that's one of the main things, right? It's a very natural clear amulet user. It doesn't necessarily need, you know, a attack boosting item. Like if you look at this, even if you're on like 196 here, adamant, it still hits so hard. It's still so bulky. It still outspeeds a lot of the slower mons that you kind of need to outspeed. So even with 4 points there, it's really, really good. And again, you can kind of just like pump it, man. Like honestly, like you just do something like this and this mon's like super, super bulky. It's like, again, yeah, it's super bulky. It hits really hard. I think Swords Dance, like, again, it's probably something I'm going to talk about a lot today. I think setup is incredibly good right now. And I think Baxcalibur is just one of the best, right? And again, like, we see so many Firewater Grass Claws running around. And Firewater Grass's biggest issue is it can't hit Dragon types, right? And then you get something like Raging Bolt that commonly pairs with these guys. And it's like, oh, this is a faster, stronger dragon that I can't just, you know, set up on that easily. Like you kind of force the terror out of something like a Raging Bolt. And then even then, a lot of the time, if you do, you know, pair this up with a mon that can take on, you know, Terra Fairy Pokemon, especially mons like, what's his name, Golden Go, it does make things a hell of a lot easier. And yeah, I think Baxcalibur is just really good. Obviously, really, really good into a lot of these like Incin, Amoonguss, Incineroar, sorry, yeah, Incin, Amoonguss, Rillaboom, not Incineroar. I said Incineroar twice. I confused myself there. But yeah, it just has a really, really positive matchup, right? I think it's really good. And again, setup is just busted. I think Swords Dance right now is kind of nutty. Now, I'm not going to lie. This next one here, it's a personal favorite of mine. It does hold a bit of a soft spot. And that is, that's Galarian Moltres. Again, right? I think setup right now is insane. And Berserk plus Nasty Plot is pretty damn good. I'm not going to lie, right? But I think what makes Galarian Moltres, like, not the best it's been in a long time. So yeah, it is the best it's been in a long time. But it is the fact that Urshifu Rapid Strike has really dropped off in usage, right? So when I personally look at this one, right, I immediately think pairing it with screens is one of the best things you can do, right? Whether that be pairing it with, you know, a Alola Ninetales Snow with Aurora Veil, or even just something like Grimmsnarl, Klefki, whatever, for screen setup, right? I think that's one of the best ways to play it, right? But obviously, its biggest issue in, you know, that kind of setup is simply that, you know, Urshi Rapid says, I don't really care. I'm just going to deal like 70, 80% to you with, you know, with just, you know, Terra Water Surging Strikes, right? But Urshi Rapid Strike it's the least use it's been in a very long time. We all know that, right? And because of that, I think this mon has a chance to creep up, right? Because obviously, one, again, I think screens are really good. But two, one of the best mons to pair with this is actually Sinister. So if you can switch this mon in, right? You know, heal it up a bit. You know, you use the Hospitality paired up with the Citrus Berry. It's like, okay, I just say the Surging Strikes. Yeah, it did 50%, but I healed 50%. And now all of a sudden, I've got like a Rocky Helmet, you know, paired up with Rage Powder here. Obviously, this mon also, like, this core pairs incredibly well with things like Incineroar as well, which are, like, really, really popular. And then all of a sudden, you can just, like, start cycling, like, Hospitality, Intimidate here, Fake Out, and just really keep the Moltres alive and kind of make it a raid boss. And honestly, this mon doesn't need that much to set up, right? Once it gets, like, to either, like, plus, you know, potentially +3, +4, Fiery Wrath and Air Slash really deal a lot of damage, right? We're in a metagame, again, where flying, like, Air Slash is just so good. There are so many grass types running around, so many fighting types running around. Like, so many mons in the current metagame are weak to flying moves. So having, like, a pretty reliable stab move here that also has a, you know, a chance to flinch, I do think is very, very good. And again, Fiery Wrath, it's just a very, very powerful spread move, right? It's a dark type. You know, not many mons in the current metagame actually resist dark outside of, like, what, probably Incineroar and the Urshifus. And again, Urshifus don't want to take on Air Slash, and Incineroars right now, a lot of them are running Terra Ghost. So, like, it kind of forces them to not Terra, or they're just going to lose. And yeah, I think this mod's like incredibly good, right? You look at it, its special bulk is like really, really nice. Because of that, you really don't have to invest in it. Its speed stat is also like really, really good. Again, you're outspeeding like a majority of like the slower mons in the format. I think something like, you know, maybe just pumping 44 here just to make it a little bit faster to catch those mons that are speed creeping that 110 to 112 range is good. Max out the HP, hit a bump number wherever that is. You know, I personally have to play around with it a bit, but I do think something like that is probably fine. And then you can just pump into defense, and then all of a sudden, this mon is like super bulky. It's super annoying to deal with. And yeah, you just go something like Terra Poison to help out with Flutter Mains. And I think it's like really, really good, right? Especially too, because if you do, maybe you don't go Grimmsnarl on a team like this. I'm trying to think like what a good screen setter here is. Like, is it just Klefki? Like, is it Klefki? I mean, Meowstic actually also isn't bad. This one also gets access to, like, Fake Out as well. And I think Psychic Stab's also not bad. But, yeah, like, maybe it is just Grimmsnarl. Maybe it's around, like, Triple Dark. I don't know. That feels kind of wild to me. But, yeah, I think Moltres, even if you just, like, drop Incin and, like, just have, what's it called here? Like, maybe something like a Landorus Therian. Just, like, a different Intimidate mon that likes to cycle, I think is also, like, pretty damn good. But, yeah, this one, I think it's got just a really good matchup into the metagame. Again, I think, like, I think setup right now is good. Like I've been saying it for a very long time. I think setup feels super good. A lot of the teams I'm playing right now are very balance orientated. And one of the best ways to beat balance is just to set up in their face while also having your own balance pieces, right? I would say one of the biggest issues Moltres does have is it probably, just based on the natural typings, it does have a pretty bad matchup into Raging Bolt, but it does have the ability to get its damage a lot higher than Raging Bolt a lot quicker, obviously with things like Nasty Plot versus Calm Mind. But obviously one of the biggest issues it does have is that if Raging Bolt is rocking a, obviously rocking Thunderclap, you do kind of feel sometimes potentially forced to, obviously click your Terra. But obviously you got to keep in mind, like, hey, if they are Calm Mind, chances are Thunderclap's their only electric move. They can't hit you until you actually start attacking. So you can kind of outpace them there, potentially get up 2-3 Nasty Plots, and then look to Terra and start attacking. Which, yeah, obviously is pretty damn good. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of Galarian Moltres. I think this one's like super slept on. Next dude here I want to touch on is the big dog Okidogi. So Okidogi is another one that I think is like super interesting, right? So when you look at this Pokemon statistically, it's like really, really good. Its attack stat is like very, very good, right? Like for a, not a support mod, but for a bulky piece that is not trying to go first, 128 is very, very nice, right? Its defensive stat 115 is like super good, especially in the current climate where like everything is like physical. Very, very good. HP stat at 88, like nothing like super crazy, but very, very solid. It's very easy to just max this out and you're very happy with that, right? Its special defense stat, it's like pretty average. It's like whatever, but this is one that just like loves Assault Vest. So the second you go like Assault Vest and then just like split your defenses here, this one's like so bulky with max HP and like it doesn't need its speed stat. Like honestly, you just run this to like 104 because I don't think Raging Bolts like are really going any faster than that. And then just like max out the attack stat here. You could even like, if you really wanted, just go something like this. Like if you really want to be like super, I don't know, like something like that's probably okay. Again, you could even like, if you really want to just like hit that next bump, just like hit this, like that also just like feels fine. Like this one's just like, it's super bulky, man. It's super bulky and it hits super hard. 198, it's like really, really good. But one of the main selling points in my opinion is this here, Guard Dog, right? That it just basically means like if they ever bring your Instant in, you get +1. You look at this attack stat, don't know why that dropped to 0 there. But this gets +1, all of a sudden you're hitting as hard as like a Guts Ursaluna, which is like pretty nutty when you think about it, right? And then again, you look at its like coverage, right? It has Drain Punch, right? So it's kind of like how Iron Hands functioned in the past formats. It's super bulky and like it's a great Assault Vest user. It also doesn't just lose to Fluttermane. That was like one of the biggest issues Hands had. Like it kind of had to Terra to beat Fluttermane. Dog doesn't have to Terra to beat Fluttermane. You can kind of just like Drain Punch and heal up. Obviously it has things like Stab, Poison Jab, also Gunk Shot if you're crazy. Gunk Shot obviously is better in terms of like picking up KOs on things like Fluttermane, but it can miss. But it also has Upper Hand. It is honestly, in my opinion, the only Pokemon right now that should probably be running Upper Hand that's actually like halfway decent, right? And again, like we're Assault Vest though, so it's like you can also just like slot in whatever else you want here. I think Ice Punch is also really good, helps out with like Landorus Incarnate. Knockoff is also like a decent option. Also like one thing I didn't mention about Upper Hand too is like, again, this mod already has a naturally really good matchup into Incineroar. And obviously Incineroars right now are running, you know, things like, what's it called? Terra, why am I blanking? Terra Ghost. But still, again, like this one can come in and say like, hey, thanks for the free +1. And if you don't Terra Ghost, I'm just going to flinch you before you can flinch like me or my ally. And then all of a sudden it's just like, you know, it just feels really weird to play Incineroar in that kind of matchup. But yeah, I think this one's like super good. It also has like pretty decent physical coverage. I'm pretty sure it gets a lot of the, God, I can't spell physical. Jesus. I think it gets a lot of the punch moves and whatnot. We have a look here. Let's have a look. Double Edge, yeah. Low Kick also, like, low key, really good as well. Especially if you want, like, a strong stab move. But I do think, obviously, Drain Punch is really good. I think it also gets CC. Yeah, it gets CC. It gets high horsepower. Honestly, just a lot of really, really good options. Like, I think this one... Yeah, dude, look at this. It's actually got such a deep move pool, man. This thing's insane. I think it's really good. I definitely think we're going to see it pick up in usage as well. So for a majority of this video, we have spoken about mons that like to set up. So I kind of want to touch on some mons that I think are really good at helping Pokemon set up. And the first one here is Clef. I'm honestly shocked at how little play Clef gets sometimes. I think this mon with Friend Guard is actually wild, right? Obviously, you look at the stats here, they're pretty poor, right? You max out the HP, obviously, and then you kind of just like, I'm pretty sure I've always just like evened out the defenses. You just try to get them to like the same number, roughly. Just because this one, obviously, is that a bump number? What's that bump at? Perfect, yeah, bang. I was going to say, go away, G-Force. I was going to say, I know my bump numbers. Yeah, so you just go like something like this, and you just go like bold, and all of a sudden this one becomes like super duper tanky with a Violet. Obviously you go for like just a defensive Terra. I don't even know what this one would have Terra, like maybe Dragon. Probably good into like all the Fire, Water, Grass stuff. or even grass actually is like really good for a Moongus. But yeah, this one, it just like, it clicks follow me, right? It has the friend guard. You can go for like options like Icy Wind if you really want to have a, you know, like if you want to have like an offensive move that it can kind of click. Icy Wind's great for getting speed control. It's also like really good with things like After You if you go like minimum speed versus Trick Room. Like say your Trick Room matchup's like really, really bad. You can go for something like, this. I'm sorry, that's wrong one. Go for something like this. And then like all of a sudden you underspeed like everything besides like Hat and Torkoal and Trick Room. And then you can like really help out into like things like Blood Moon Ursaluna, even Iron Hands, Amoonguss, all that kind of stuff, right? But also this one just has like just a really good hit, right? It's got Life Dew, which is like, again, super, super good. I think like, because it works next to Protect as well. And it also works on Pokemon like Golden Go. Fun fact, you can't Heal Pulse a Golden Go, but you can Life Dew it up, which is kind of funny. But yeah, it has like just a lot of really, really good support stuff, right? If we have a look here, status, have a look at some of the stuff, right? Has things like Encore, which I don't think Slow Encore is good. Fake Tears is bad as well. Helping Hand obviously is like super good. I think Helping Hand on this one is like also really good because obviously, you know, if you pair it up with, for example, Volcarona from earlier, you get Volcarona to a +1 speed. Now it outspeeds everything in the game, and now you just start like Helping Hand Heat Waving. It's kind of nutty, right? Obviously T-Wave as well, I think, could be an option. Slow Charm, while it isn't great, definitely has some use. Even things like so my apologies, the recording just randomly cut off. I'm not too sure what happened there. I forget exactly where I was up to. Actually, I don't even know where it cut off, if I'm being honest. But yeah, look, Clef, super good support, right? It has a lot of really, really good options. And yeah, honestly, I'm shocked this one doesn't get more play, and I would not be surprised to see it get some really, really good results in the near future. So carrying on with our theme of Pokemon that are really, really good at keeping ones alive, it's Grimmsnarl. So again, one of, I think, the biggest issues we've had with screens for a majority of Scarlet and Violet is the fact that the Urshifus were so damn good, right? In particular, Urshifu Rapid Strike. Because Urshifu Dark does not have a great matchup into Grimmsnarl, right? This one has access to Spirit Break, and it can really threaten a lot of damage while really not taking that much damage itself in return, right? Obviously, close combat is, you know, neutral, but of course, you can set up a Reflect for that, and you already 4x resist the Wicked Blows, right? So when you take a look at this one, attack stat, obviously very, very nice. Its defensive stats are quite poor, but again, when you play this one, you really kind of want to just invest into the defensive stats, right? But again, also, you kind of want to just click things like Reflect and Light Screen, which just, you know, again, double your defensive stats. It's very, very nice, yeah. And of course, oh, that's a light ball. I want to play. Yeah, perfect, yeah, that'd be sick. But then of course as well, the other option it has here as well is Parting Shot. So this one here, I think, is an incredibly good damage reduction Pokemon. Very, very good when paired up with things like Raging Bolt, right? These super bulky mons that love to set up, I think Grimmsnarl is really good with, right? Obviously, you look at the list we spoke about today, Volcarona is a great option. Obviously, Raging Bolt, one of the best ones in the format. One of the guys, Target Tom, played in the, I believe it was the State of Origin with him. You know, another fellow Melbourne local. He loves his Grimmsnarl screens. He's been playing it a lot, and I know he's had a lot of success with Carmine Raging Bolt in particular, right? And again, there's a lot of other mons here as well. Actually, the next one on the list I also think is actually very good on these screen teams as well. We will touch on them shortly. But yeah, I think Grimmsnarl, the reason why I think this mon is so good, or at least screens in general is so good, is Urshi Rapid is down, and Urshi Dark is not as hard to beat on these screen teams, right? All it takes is like one good fairy type behind the screen, and Urshi Dark, it just essentially feels useless, right? Like, for example, I'll spoil it. So the next one we're going to touch on is Sylveon. I know it's, you know, people have been talking a bit about it in the last couple of weeks, but I think Carmine Sylveon's really good. And I think Sylveon paired up with Grimmsnarl behind screens is also really, really good, right? And again, like, you look at all these teams right now, the metagame already feels like it's pretty naturally slow. So when you get like, you know, a bulky mon, maybe put it behind a Protect or something like that, it just becomes incredibly hard to deal with, I think. And I think Grimmsnarl is just one of the best enablers right now in terms of just buffing up these setup attackers. I just think it's so good, man. Like, honestly, it's slept on. I'll probably do a video in the coming weeks about it because I am working on a Grimmsnarl team right now. But I am going to keep that private until I use it because I probably will use it at some point in the tournament. But yeah, sorry. I won't make it public just yet, but just know I am working on a Grimmsnarl screens. I think screens is incredibly good right now. And yeah, definitely keep an eye out for it. Now, I know I just spoiled it, but it's Sylveon, dude. This guy... Sylveon is like so good right now, and I think you can honestly run it with a few different sets. Obviously, you definitely want Pixelate. In terms of Terra, I personally really like Terra Fire. One, because I think defensively it's really good, obviously, on a fairy type. But two, I think it pairs incredibly well offensively. I think Ground is also another really good option. Mainly because this one, like, one, Hyper Voice is its best stab. Pixelate Hyper Voice, for anyone who doesn't know, basically turns all normal type moves into fairy type moves, and then boosts them by 1.2 times. So obviously, you look at, you know, this base power here, it's, you know, 90 base power, times that by 1.2. I don't know exactly what the answer is to what that would be. I know it's at least +9. I think it makes it like base 102 damage, something like that. I could be wrong. But honestly, it's pretty good, right? It's a very powerful spread move. It's very nice. But also, this one also loves Terra Blast. So for anyone who doesn't know, Terra Blast, obviously it's a special attack by, by nature, but it's also a normal type move, which means this is a no drawback 80 base power special move that Sylveon can use. So because it's normal type as well, it becomes a fairy type move, which is obviously very, very good. And then this one, it just, pairs up like Calm Mind, right? And then just Protect, right? Very, very simple. If you need coverage, you Terra it. If you don't need coverage for it, obviously you just like Calm Mind up and click these buttons, man. And it goes kind of nutty. On sets like this, I think Leftovers is very, very good. I also think Covet Cloak is also like very, very underrated right now. In my experience playing this mon, some of the biggest issues I've had are things like Raging Bolts with Assault Vest just spamming Snarl every single turn. Even things like Assault Vest, Archaludons, they go for whatever terror they have if they need it. And they just sit there and spam Snarl, and it's like, okay, you keep setting up the Calm Minds, but you're never going to do any damage. Because of that, I do think Covet Cloak is also really good. Not to mention, like, having the safety of just setting up in front of Incineroar obviously is always very, very nice, right? In terms of how you would play this mon, again, this is a mon that, one, I think it loves screens, but two, it also loves the standard balance, right? It loves having redirection from, like, Ogerpon or from Amoonguss. It loves having the Fake Out plus Intimidate from Incineroar. It also really enjoys playing with Rillaboom as well. Fake Out plus Terrain, I think, is also really, really good for keeping it healthy. And again, you look at this mon's stats here, its speed stats kind of whatever. Honestly, you could even run like a negative speed, like a Quiet Nature if you really wanted. You definitely want a special attack boosting nature. How much you want to invest? I don't know what the best is. I was personally testing 156. I think something like this is what I was running. With a little bit less here. I think it was 99. Is that hit? Yeah, so I think I was personally running something like this. And again, you pair it up with things like Intimidate, you pair it up with screens, redirection, all that stuff. It kind of goes crazy. But yeah, I think this one's just like, I think it's really, really good, right? It loves having the defensive investment. It also, again, it can just set up and run through a lot of teams. When you look at a lot of the teams that are really popular right now, right? Or at least the Mons in particular, you look at this Mon's stats, right? 95 HP, 130 special defense. Fluttermane really doesn't want to take it on. Obviously, Raging Bolt definitely doesn't want to take it on, right? Because obviously, you can't drop a Draco on it, and if they're clicking Calm Minds, you can't hit them with Thunderclap, right? So there's a very, very good matchup there, which is honestly one of the main things as to why I think this Mon's good. And even then, a lot of these physical attackers, right? The only physical attacker that really is decent into this, in my opinion, again, is Urshifu, right? Urshifu is very good into either the Terra Ground or the Terra Fire sets. But not to mention, it doesn't care about Intimidate. It doesn't care about screens and kind of run through it. What have I been saying this whole time? Like, Urshi Rapid Strike right now is like the lowest usage it's ever been. And because of that, I do think we'll see it rise up again because a lot of people aren't prepping for it as much as they used to. And because of that, obviously, it will naturally just come back into the metagame. But yes, I think Sylveon right now it's so slept on, man. This month's matchup into the current metagame is so sick. Even stuff like, I've seen people running things like Specs with Quick Attack or like Life Orb Quick Attack. Because you just go like Life Orb and in this slot, you just go like Quick Attack. And then when you see like the Urshi Darks, you just go like Hyper Voice into Quick Attack and snipe them. It's like pretty funny. Even like the Choice Spec set with like 3 attack plus Quick Attack, I think is really good. Because what were people running as the last move on this? It wasn't Gleam. I feel like I've seen something in particular that people were running. Why Terra Blast, Hyper Voice, Quick Attack? Why am I blanking? I feel like there's something they were running on this. Swift? That's kind of crazy. Oh, Hyper Beam. I think it was Hyper Beam for the noob. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, so it was like Hyper Beam, Terra Blast, Hyper Voice. So you've got like 2 stabs here, technically 4 stabs. But obviously you can Terra this into something else. And yeah, dude, it's just like, it's so good. Offensively right now, it does a lot of damage. And if you can ever get up 1 or 2 Calm Minds, this one can honestly sweep a lot of teams. So the next one here is a mon that I actually got some questions about in my last video when I ranked the archetype so high. And that was like the Regidrago Hyper Offense. Now, I understand why a lot of people question about why this mon's like not that good. Or at least like why I personally rank it so high. And honestly, like one, you look at the ability here, and then you look at like the stab moves in Dragon Energy and Draco Meteor. Obviously just 2 like very, very insanely good stab moves here, right, when paired up with Dragon more. But really, I think where this one honestly thrives is its ability to kind of force out the terror on Pokemon like Raging Bolt in particular, but also too, it hits neutrals for like really, really strong damage, right? Now, what do I think the best way to play this Pokemon is? In all honesty, I think this is like the best way to play them on. Modest. I know a lot of people will probably like question this and say like, oh, like, the Dragon Fang plus like blah, blah, blah is like really good. Yeah, it is. I'm not going to lie. I think the Dragon Fang set is really good, especially if you're playing it on Hyper Offense. But I don't know if that's even the best way to play this mon right now. I actually think that the best way to play this guy is Choice Scarf on a side spam team. One of the, the players at my locals, Bravado VGC, top 4 at Brisbane Regional, very good player. I know he runs it a lot. He loves pairing this up with his side spam stuff. And again, I think it's just like super good on side spam, right? Because when you look at a lot of these side spam teams, right, or at least especially the hard trick rooms, right? Normally they'll have, obviously their side spam, right? So that'll be the Galay, the Indeedee, the Hat, yeah, or the Armor Rouge, however you want to run it, right? So you got those 3 there, right? And then a lot of the time they pair it up with, say, like Torkoal Lilligant. And then they kind of have that last slot open, right? And a lot of the time that'll be things like a Choice Specs Fluttermane or, whatever it is, whatever your choice is, right? Normally it's something that is very good outside of Trick Room, that is also like pretty good in Sun. But I think the reason Regidrago in particular is so good on those teams is because, like, 1, Raging Bolt with Assault Vest kind of eats those teams alive, right? But 2, Raging Bolt really does not want to take on Torkoal if it terrors, right? Obviously, it's still really fat, and obviously it has, it has a natural defense into it, right, with its dragon typing. But Regidrago is the kind of Pokemon where it says, like, hey, I'm going to just, like, Helping Hand Draco you, or, like, Helping Hand Dragon Energy you, and just, like, put out so much damage that I force you to Terror, right? And one of the awkward things with Regidrago, with Raging Bolt as well, is it feels like if you're in a situation where you're kind of forced to Terror the Bolt, then Drago can just play around, right? You can potentially just cycle it out, protect, see what it wants to do. If it Terra Fairies turn 1, fantastic, right? You can kind of chip it down with things, obviously mons like, for example, the Hat, the Armor Rouge, the Torkoal, whatever it might be, like, right? Hisuian Lilligant in this particular case with the, this Sunroom team I'm talking about. But this one just, like, it does so much neutral damage across the board. And, like, all you really have to do is just, like, make sure you get rid of the fairies. And this one can sweep, man. Like, this one does so much damage. It's actually insane. I really think it's, like, super slept on, man. And again, I think these side spam teams, Regidrago is, like, so good on them, man. Because, again, if you can force, the defensive terror on something like a Raging Bolt, it, like, makes the side spam so much easier. Because all of a sudden, it's like, oh, now you don't have to worry about, like, something in the back terroring into, like, Steel to, like, eat the Dazzling Gleams, the power, what's it called? The Meteor Beams coming out of, Armor Rouge, or, of course, the Expanding Forces, right? But yeah. Super good. Honestly, another really slept on mon. I think super good on both, like, even on hyper offense, this mon's still really good. But yeah, I think Drago is, like, I think it's sick, man. Now, to round out the top 10, we have Galarian Zapdos. I think this mon is in a very, very interesting spot at the minute. So, obviously, the main thing going for this one here is its Defiant ability. Why is Defiant so good? Because obviously, if you get Intimidated, you get +2 to your attack stat. And Incineroar is a really good Pokemon, right? I think having a mon that can kind of deter the Incineroar, while also having the ability to threaten a one-shot on it with things like Thunderous Kick or Close Combat at +1, obviously is really good, because if you can force the Incineroar to Terra turn 1, it makes, game planning for it a lot easier. Or even if you can just, like, deter your opponent from even bringing the Incineroar, obviously can make things a lot easier, right? But I do think this mon has another, well, at least 2 more things that are going for it that are obviously very, very powerful. 1, I think it's a fantastic Choice Scarf Pokemon. Obviously, the ability to always buff up your attack if your opponent tries to reduce the stat is very, very good. But it is also base 100 speed. Why is base 100 speed so good? Basically because all of the other common Choice Scarf Pokemon are slower than this, right? When I think of Choice Scarf is in the current format, obviously the Urshifus are like the main ones, or at least Urshifu Rapid Strike in particular is the main one that comes to mind. Of course, we've seen things like Choice Scarf Landorus, Landorus T as well, which I still see every now and then on ladder. It's not as popular, but it is still very, very good. But they are both slower than this, and they both love running Adamant. Because of that, going just 252 is very, very safe. And even Landorus's as well. A lot of the time, even if they do run Jolly, they'll be like Jolly 150 to make sure they outspeed Urshifu. And they're never ready for the Zapdos, which I do think is very important, because it does mean you can just go for something like an Adamant Nature, just run something like this super quick, you hit super hard. And obviously too, this one gets access to U-turn as well, which is obviously very, very nice. Your stab move in Thunderous Kick as well is very spammable. Like a guaranteed -1 to their defense stat is like very, very nice. And then of course you get access to things like Stab Brave Bird. And of course we also see things like Dual Wing Beat as well, which is obviously very, very nice, especially into things like, Focus Sash, Urshifus, right? But there's another set on this mon that I also think is very, very good, and that is actually the Covet Cloak set. And the reason for Covet Cloak being so good is obviously one, you just can't get faked out anymore by Incineroar, which is obviously very, very nice. But 2, this mod is just like, I think it can kind of just exist, right? Like you can just sit around the board, you can be super annoying, right? Obviously, I still think Brave Bird is like Personally, I like Brave Bird over Dual Wing Beat. I should probably say that because I just like the raw damage. Obviously, the recoil sucks, but if you ever get +1, you just deal so much damage. Again, Thunderous Kick, super spammable. But this one, obviously having Protect as well, I think is very nice. But you also just get a bunch of really cool things, right? One of which is Tailwind, right? You can be, you know, somewhat on the faster end of like Tailwind setters, run something like this, and then kind of just like bulk it up. You can even honestly run this even slower. Like, you really don't have to put that much speed. Run something like, if you really want to be crazy, like 145. You know, you don't need that much attack investment. You can, you know, bulk it up, you know, figure out whatever speed stat you want. But yeah, just be like a bulky Tailwind setter, you know, with Covet Cloak, which is still really nice, but also gets Taunt. And for me, that's kind of like one of the major things, right? When you look at the current Pokemon that are good, right? Or at least the balance scores in particular, because that's why I think this one really thrives, right? With the Covet Cloak set, into things like Amoonguss, obviously you can threaten the Brave Bird one shot, but if they have Terror, they can live it. So because of that, you can just like taunt it. Obviously with Covet Cloak into Incineroar, he can't fake you out. He's going to give you Defiant, and you kind of mess it up. And then you've got like Rillaboom. Again, Rillaboom can't, you know, he can't fake you out because of Covet Cloak. But also you just resist his grass type moves, right? And again, if you bulk this one out, you can eat the Grassy Glides and the Wood Hammers for days, while always being able to just threaten a one-shot with something like Brave Bird, which I think is very, very good. And again, even like the Ogerpawns, right? Obviously Ogerpawn Wellspring's not that bad into you. Obviously, can redirect you. You threaten a one-shot on it, but of course as well, you know, can, you know, fire up a bit of damage with the Ivy Cudgels, right? Depending on, oh, actually, in saying that, I think all the Ivy Cudgels deal a lot of damage outside of the grass variant. But yeah, I think Galarian Zapdos just has such a good matchup into the current metagame. I mean, it really is just an underexplored one. I personally love this one and definitely want to test it out more myself. Also too, I didn't mention it, the Choice Scarf set. I think that's also really good on these Gouging Fire teams as well, because you can, again, run like the Adamant 252 stuff, where you go like this, and then have your Gouging Fire obviously be a little bit quicker, and then your Gouging Fire just gives you the Howl boost, and it's also really good because the Gouging Fire teams, a lot of the time, like King Gambit, because King Gambit can take on the, what's it called? King Gambit takes on the Intimidate monsters. God, I don't know why that was so hard to get off. Yeah, Gambit like helps you with the Intimidate mons. Galarian Zapdos also helps you with the Intimidate mons, but it's also a lot quicker. And yeah, just a cool mod, man. Try Galarian Zapdos. I know I definitely will be in the near future. Now, guys, while that is it for the list of 10 here, I did actually want to throw in some special mentions because there are some Pokemon that I do think are very good that are flying under the radar. I won't go too much into detail with them, especially too because these usage stats are obviously, I believe, from last month, not the current month we're in. And one of them, in particular, the first guy we're going to look at here is on the rise, but that's Articuno. Again, I'm not going to go too much in depth on these guys. Articuno did just win a massive event, though. Snowcloak in the snow is very, very good. This one it's just super annoying to deal with, right? Articuno, it's had a lot of really good results. Ice typing right now, offensively, just seems incredibly good. The next guy here is Excadrill. I think there is so much potential in this mon. People just need to find the right way to play it. But this one, without a doubt, has the best matchup into Raging Bolt out of every Pokemon in the game. It is obviously immune to the electric stabs, does not care about the Snarl, does not care about the Electro Web, and it is a natural resistance as well to Draco Meteor. So because of that, very, very good. Honestly, it feels like you need a Ground Steel or a Ground Fairy type if you want to beat the Raging Bolt. Next guy, though, is Komodo. We spoke a lot about the Dragon types today, and I feel like Komodo does still see a bit of a play, especially at the highest, the highest level of the ladder. But I do think at the lower ladder and just tournaments in general, it doesn't see that much play. But as a setup mon, as a Dragon type, it is still one of the best in the game. Next guy to Corviknight. This mon just has such an incredibly good matchup into Landorus Incarnate, which is one of the best mons in the format right now. Not to mention, it is still, it's got a very powerful stab move from Brave Bird. Its ability in Mirror Armor as well is like super good into things like Incineroar. And yeah, it can just be super annoying, right? It can go for like these roost sets. It can go for the Iron Defense Body Press stuff. Obviously, it has a very good, stab in Steel into things like Fluttermane. Just yeah, incredibly good, and I think Steel Flying in particular is very, very good. And then to round us off, it's just Registeel. Very similar to what I kind of said about the last two. It is like super bulky, and once this one sets up, it's kind of insane. If you can get like a few Iron Defenses up, Terra Water, pair it up with something like, Gresselias, the Amoongus's even things like Sinistcha. Dude, this one can kind of just like, it can start running through. I think it's really good. But yeah, anyway, guys, that is my list. I guess let me know down below if you think I missed anything or if maybe you think I'm wrong on any of these takes. I guess as well, let me know if you think any of them are even just like hot takes. Like mods like Volcarona, I feel weird kind of putting them on this list simply because I think Volk is really good. But at the same time, it's like, has it already caught on? Are we like a week or two away from Volcarona becoming insane? Yeah, I'm super interested just to hear what you guys say, because I know at the start of the regulation, I was beating the drum of like, Urshidark's good, Urshidark's good, Urshidark's good. And then eventually it got to a point where people were like, dude, Urshidark's not underrated anymore. And I'm like, yeah, well, you know, it's not underrated anymore, but it was underrated 4 weeks ago when I started saying it was underrated. But yeah, anyway, guys, that's going to be it for this one. Let me know down below what you think, and I'll catch you to the next one. Peace.